Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for your testimony. I do want to note, kind of for the record, we know that Mr. Zubin was invited to attend, would have attended probably if he weren't traveling today, and doing the important work that he has in terms of maintaining our sanctions regime. And thank you for your kind comments, Attorney General. I like calling people Attorney General because I think it's a very high calling as a former Attorney General from North Dakota. You know, and I hate to do this, but I'm going to talk about a series of hypotheticals. And I want to ask, what if, and obviously both very critical of the action the administration took, what if the administration had made this payment but it were in wire transfers? Would you feel any differently about this payment? And if we can just do yes or no's, that'd be great. Attorney General?
Yes.
Yes.
So if this was not a cash transfer, you'd feel differently about the payments. That I think we've confirmed that. If in fact we were ordered or lost the case in front of the Hague Tribunal, would you have thought it was appropriate to make a payment without at least discussing and without, you know, we can talk about whether it's ransom. Obviously, we're settling a claim, but one of the criticisms of the nuclear deal was that we didn't get more concessions on missiles, we didn't get more concessions on hostages, you know, that this went on without those discussions. And so now we're in this ironic place of having settled a long-term financial claim that was pending before an international tribunal with the criticism that we did work a side deal, you know, and that's my assessment of it, for release of hostages. So if in fact we had been ordered by the tribunal to make payment, and that payment included an interest component, do either of you believe that we should have made that payment?
If we're ordered by a tribunal to which, I mean, you're...
Right. I'm saying, let's say that instead of settling the claim in the Hague Tribunal, we actually took this to full litigation and there was an international order. We lost.
Right. If we are ordered by a tribunal to whose jurisdiction we have agreed to do something, then we have to do it.
Right. So frequently, as you know, as the former Attorney General and your whole life in the legal arena, when we're looking at a large claim and we're able to settle it for much less, that's not necessarily a bad thing to engage in a settlement.
Correct.
Correct. Ambassador?
Senator Heitkamp, I agree with what my colleague just said, but I think the issue here is the conflation of that settlement with the release of the hostages. And I think that's why even members of the administration, according to the Wall Street Journal, thought that this looked like a ransom and therefore were opposed. People in the Justice Department reputedly were opposed to this, and I would have agreed with them.
Yeah, I think that we're in that spot where we're looking at motivation as opposed to kind of looking at from a legal standpoint. Obviously, there's legitimacy to the argument that there was a claim pending in front of the Hague Tribunal. That claim had been pending for a number of years. We settled the claim, and oh, by the way, we also were able to secure the release of the hostages. So I think we need to be, if the answer is we should have settled the claim and not tried to get Americans home, I think there would be a lot of people on the other side equally critical of that decision, even though it appears or there's an appearance of impropriety as it relates to payment of ransom. Would you agree with that?
No, Senator Heitkamp, I don't agree with that. I think the issue here is not that no one wanted to get Americans back. People did obviously want to get Americans back. The issue is what means you use to get them back. And if the means you use is paying the Iranian government off in anticipation of a judgment that has not yet been rendered, and which, I mean, if it were rendered, I agree with General Mukasey, we would obviously have to abide by it. But it hadn't been rendered. The administration has made the argument that it was imminent and it was going to happen soon and it was going to lead to larger costs. Yeah. Possibly. I'd like to know the rationale for that statement because I don't think it's ever been provided.
I think having been someone who have been historically involved in some pretty high-profile settlements, hindsight is always 20/20, and there's always judgment on whether we could have done better, whether we should have held out. I think that this is a judgment that was made by the administration that they were actually saving taxpayer dollars. We'll never know because we'll never see the ultimate litigation. But I mean, I think it is important to get your opinion that the troublesome piece of this really has been the cash transfer and not necessarily the payment, had the payment been ordered by the court, or the payment, had the payment been done with a wire transfer. So thank you for your comments. Maybe in a second round, we'll get a chance to talk about what the future looks like in terms of Iranian policy, which I think is one of the great opportunities that we have in this hearing today. Just that it's enormously important that the discussion about national security issues take the level that we've taken today, where we can have reasonable disagreement. Hopefully, we learn a little from each other and that we can move forward. This is one of the gravest threats facing our national security and the security of our allies. And I want to thank everyone for their volunteering today. Sometimes, especially when you come with a minority opinion, it's a little tougher. So thank you, Dr. Maloney, for appearing. And I look forward to better understanding how we can move forward in a very nonpartisan way to address the concerns that every member of the United States Senate, and hopefully anyone who has awareness, situational awareness of what's happening in the Mideast, the concerns that they have about protecting our allies and protecting our national security against the Iranian regime. And so thank you so much for coming.